You're doing it right now. That thing where you smile and say you're fine when your chest feels like it's caving in. Where you function perfectly on the outside, while something inside you is screaming. You've gotten so good at it, so practiced. You wake up, you go through the motions, you perform stability for everyone around you, and nobody knows. Nobody sees the war you're fighting internally every single day. You tell yourself it's strength. You tell yourself other people have it worse. You tell yourself your pain doesn't count because you're still standing, still functioning, still here. But that's not strength. That's survival mode. And survival mode was never meant to be permanent. You've been carrying wounds you never let heal, swallowing pain you never processed, maintaining composure while parts of you are dying quietly where nobody can see. And I'm here to tell you something you don't want to hear. It's time to stop. Stop pretending the weight isn't crushing you. Stop performing fine when you're breaking. Stop bleeding quietly like your pain doesn't matter, because it does matter. And ignoring it isn't making you stronger, it's making you hollow. Let's talk about what's really happening inside you. The truth you've been avoiding, the cost you've been paying in silence. You know exactly what I'm talking about. That thing you don't talk about. The hurt you minimized. The betrayal you rationalized. The loss you never grieved because grieving felt like weakness. You packed it away, told yourself to move on, convinced yourself that acknowledging pain was the same as being controlled by it. So you became an expert at compression, at taking everything that hurts and stuffing it down, making it smaller, quieter, more manageable. You learned how to function with broken pieces inside you, how to smile through the ache, how to perform normalcy while your internal world was chaos. And people believed the performance. Why wouldn't they? You're so convincing, so put together, so capable. They have no idea you're running on fumes, that you're one bad day away from collapse, that the strength they admire is actually exhaustion wearing a mask. Here's what you don't want to admit. You're tired. Bone deep, soul crushing tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the kind that comes from pretending for too long. You're tired of holding yourself together. Tired of being strong for everyone else, while nobody asks if you're okay. Tired of minimizing your own pain because someone else's suffering seems more valid. You compare yourself to people who have it worse and use that comparison as a reason to deny your own hurt. At least I'm not other people survive worse. I should be grateful. Stop. That's not gratitude. That's self-abandonment. Your pain doesn't need to compete for validity. It doesn't need to be the worst pain in the world to matter. It's yours, and it's real. And you've been treating it like it's optional to address. You've been lying to yourself for so long, you don't even recognize it as lying anymore. You've made peace with functioning at 40% and calling it success. You've normalized suffering because addressing it feels harder than enduring it. But here's the truth you're avoiding. Endurance without recovery is just slow destruction. You think you're being strong by pushing through. You think you're being mature by not complaining. You think you're being responsible by keeping it together, but you're not keeping it together. You're compressing damage. And compressed damage doesn't disappear. It just waits, building pressure, creating cracks you can't see yet. You feel it in the small moments, when minor inconveniences irritate you more than they should, when you snap at people who don't deserve it, when you can't enjoy things that used to bring you joy because something inside you is just numb. That numbness isn't peace, that's shutdown. Your system protecting itself from overload by feeling less of everything, and the anger. Let's talk about the anger you're sitting on. The kind you never express because expressing it feels dangerous. Like if you let it out, you won't be able to control it. So you swallow it, again and again, until it becomes this constant background hum, this tightness in your chest that never quite goes away. You're angry at people who hurt you and never acknowledged it. Angry at yourself for accepting treatment you knew was wrong. Angry at the world for not being what you needed it to be. But you don't let yourself feel that anger fully, because feeling it means dealing with it. And dealing with it means change. And change feels like too much when you're already barely holding on. So you stay stuck in the hurt, in the performance, in the quiet bleeding that nobody sees. And every day you do this, you betray yourself a little more. You teach yourself that your pain doesn't matter, that your needs are secondary, that your breaking is something to hide rather than something to heal. That stops today, not because it's easy, but because you're done paying this price. Let's be honest about what this is actually costing you. Because you've been pretending the cost is manageable. It's not. It's costing you sleep. Real sleep. The kind where you actually rest instead of just lying there with your mind racing through everything you're avoiding. It's costing you presence. You're physically here, but mentally somewhere else, replaying the past, worrying about the future, never fully in the moment, because the moment feels too heavy to be in completely. It's costing you relationships, real ones, because you can't let people get close when you're hiding this much. You keep them at a distance. Keep conversations surface level. Keep your struggles private, because letting people in feels like admitting defeat. It's costing you your health, your body keeping score of every stress you ignore, every boundary you don't set, every time you push through when you should rest. The tension headaches, the stomach issues, the constant fatigue that doesn't make sense because you're not doing anything that hard, except you are. You're carrying invisible weight all day, every day. It's costing you clarity. You can't think straight when you're in survival mode. You make decisions from fear instead of wisdom. You avoid instead of address. You react instead of respond. It's costing you time. Time you'll never get back. Days, weeks, months, maybe years of living at half capacity because you're using all your energy just to maintain the facade. And here's the cost you really don't want to face. It's costing you yourself, the person you could be, the life you could live, the peace you could feel, all of it on hold because you're too busy surviving to actually live. You're not growing, you're not healing, you're not building, you're just enduring. Day after day, waiting for it to get better on its own, waiting for the pain to magically resolve without you having to do the hard work of addressing it. But it won't. It doesn't work that way. Ignored pain doesn't heal. It festers. It spreads. It shapes you in ways you don't choose. You become reactive, defensive, closed off. Not because that's who you are, but because that's who survival mode makes you. And the worst part? You know this. Deep down, you know you can't keep going like this. You know something has to change, but change is terrifying when you're already barely holding it together. Change means facing what you've been avoiding. Change means feeling what you've been suppressing. Change means admitting that the way you've been handling this isn't working. So you delay. You tell yourself not yet. You tell yourself when things calm down. You tell yourself when I'm stronger. But things don't calm down on their own, and you won't get stronger by continuing to do what's breaking you. Strength doesn't come from endurance without recovery. It comes from addressing what's wrong and building something different. Here's what you need to hear. You don't heal by waiting. You don't heal by hoping. You don't heal by pretending it's not that bad. You heal by stopping, by saying enough, by deciding that functioning while broken is no longer acceptable. You heal by choosing yourself for once, by making your recovery as important as everyone else's comfort, by admitting that you can't pour from an empty cup and you've been empty for way too long. This isn't selfishness. This is survival, real survival. Not the kind where you just barely make it through each day. The kind where you actually build something sustainable. And it starts with one simple, terrifying truth. You have to stop pretending you're fine. So what does stopping look like? What does choosing yourself actually mean in practice? It doesn't mean falling apart. It doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean announcing your struggle to everyone. It means building structure that supports you instead of structure that performs for others. It means creating routines that protect your energy instead of drain it. It means setting boundaries that preserve your capacity instead of exceed it. It means treating your recovery like a responsibility, not a mood. Not something you do when you feel like it. Something you do because your life depends on it. Start simple, stupidly simple, because you don't have energy for complex right now. A consistent sleep schedule, same bedtime, same wake time, even on weekends, especially on weekends. Your nervous system needs predictability to heal. One meal a day that isn't chaos. Not perfect nutrition, not Instagram worthy. Just one meal where you actually sit down and eat food that doesn't make you feel worse. 10 minutes of movement, walking, stretching, anything that gets you out of your head and into your body, because your body is carrying stress you're not processing mentally. These aren't impressive, they're not transformative by themselves, but they're buildable, and building is what you need, because here's what you don't understand yet. Consistency heals what emotion can't. Emotion is unreliable. Some days you'll feel motivated. Most days you won't. If you wait for feeling, you'll wait forever. But if you build structure, if you create systems that don't require you to feel good to execute, you give yourself something to stand on when everything inside you is unstable. Structure becomes the container for your chaos. It doesn't fix the chaos. It keeps the chaos from spilling into everything. You do the same thing at the same time every day, not because it's exciting, because it removes decision fatigue, because it creates rhythm, because rhythm stabilizes the mind. And yes, you'll resist this. Part of you will say this is too rigid, or I don't want to be controlled by schedules, or this feels like I'm just going through the motions. You are going through the motions. That's the point. The motions create stability. Stability creates capacity. Capacity creates space to actually heal. You don't feel your way into new actions. You act your way into new feelings. You don't wait until you feel better to start taking care of yourself. You take care of yourself until you start feeling better. That's the shift. From waiting to acting. From hoping to building. From surviving to structuring. And here's what structure actually gives you. Evidence. Evidence that you can keep a promise to yourself. Evidence that you can show up even when you don't want to. Evidence that you're capable of more than just barely making it through. That evidence rebuilds trust, self-trust, the kind you lost when you kept abandoning yourself, when you kept putting everyone else first, when you kept breaking promises to yourself because something else seemed more urgent. You rebuild that trust one kept commitment at a time. One morning you actually woke up when you said you would. One workout you did when you didn't feel like it. One boundary you held when it would have been easier to bend. Small evidence. Real evidence. Building slowly into belief. And as that belief builds, something shifts. You stop asking, can I do this? You start assuming, I'll handle it. You stop seeing yourself as someone who's trying. You start seeing yourself as someone who follows through. That identity shift changes everything. It changes how you make decisions. It changes what you tolerate. It changes what you're willing to accept from yourself and others. You become someone who doesn't negotiate with their own excuses anymore. Someone who doesn't need perfect conditions to act. Someone who moves forward regardless of how they feel. Not because you're healed, because you're disciplined. And discipline is what carries you when everything else fails. Here's what happens when you actually commit to this. When you stop hiding and start building. First, you get lonelier. Not forever, but initially. Because the people who are comfortable with your dysfunction get uncomfortable with your discipline. The people who relied on your availability get confused when you set boundaries. The people who benefited from your self-abandonment don't like the version of you that chooses yourself. Let them be uncomfortable. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. You also get quieter. You stop explaining yourself to people who don't need the explanation. You stop defending your choices to people who aren't living with the consequences. You just do what you said you'd do, without announcement, without justification, without seeking approval. That quietness unsettles people. They're used to your performance. You're over-explaining, your need to be understood. When you stop needing that, when you just exist and execute without narrating every decision, they don't know how to read you anymore. Good. You're not here to be read. You're here to be stable. Your energy changes. People feel it even if they can't name it. You're not as available, not as accommodating, not as willing to absorb their chaos while ignoring your own. You become selective with your time, with your attention, with who gets access to you. That selectiveness looks like coldness to people who were used to unlimited access. It's not coldness, it's boundaries. There's a difference. You also start finishing things, not perfectly, not impressively, but finishing. Finishing changes you. It removes that constant background shame of being behind, of starting things and abandoning them, of having potential but no follow-through. You finish because you don't let mood dictate action anymore. You finish because you committed to the structure, and the structure doesn't care how you feel. That consistency builds momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence builds capacity. And capacity is what you've been missing. The ability to handle more than just survival. The ability to actually build instead of just endure. You start noticing what drains you versus what sustains you. And you start making different choices. You stop forcing relationships that require you to be less. You stop staying in conversations that leave you depleted. You stop saying yes when you mean no just to avoid conflict. You protect your energy like it's finite, because it is. And you've been spending it like it's unlimited. That protection feels selfish at first, because you've been trained to believe that taking care of yourself is selfish. It's not. It's necessary, and the people who matter will understand that. The people who don't matter will complain. Let them. Your sleep improves. Not immediately, but gradually. Because you're not carrying as much unprocessed weight into bed with you. You're addressing things during the day instead of ruminating on them all night. You're moving your body so it actually needs rest. You're keeping your word to yourself so you're not drowning in background shame. Sleep becomes rest again, instead of just a break from consciousness. And here's the shift that matters most. You start respecting yourself again. Not because you're perfect, not because you've fixed everything, but because you're showing up. Because you're keeping promises to yourself. Because you're treating your recovery like it matters. That self-respect changes how you move through the world, how you speak, what you accept, what you walk away from. You become someone who doesn't tolerate what used to be normal, someone who doesn't explain themselves to people who aren't listening, someone who doesn't bleed quietly anymore because they've finally learned to stop the bleeding. So here's where we are. You have a choice. You can keep doing what you've been doing, keep pretending, keep bleeding quietly, Keep functioning while breaking. Keep telling yourself it's fine when it's not. That's an option. You can choose that. You can keep compressing the pain, keep performing stability, keep surviving instead of living. Or you can decide today is the day it stops. Not because you have all the answers, not because you feel ready, not because it's convenient, because you're done. Done lying to yourself, done minimizing your own pain, done accepting a half-life because addressing the real issue feels too hard. This decision isn't dramatic, it's not a moment you'll announce, it's a quiet shift that only you will know about. It's the decision to treat yourself like you matter, to build structure that supports you instead of structure that performs for others, to choose consistency over comfort. It's deciding that your recovery is not optional, that your well-being is not negotiable, that bleeding quietly is no longer acceptable. And yes, it will be hard. Harder than enduring, because enduring is passive. Building is active. Active requires energy you're not sure you have. But here's what you're missing. You find that energy by moving, not by waiting for it to appear. Movement creates energy. Structure creates capacity. You don't need to feel strong to start. You need to start to become strong. One decision, one commitment, one day at a time. Not because it's easy, because you're worth it. Because your life is worth more than just surviving it. Because you've been bleeding quietly for too long, and it's time to stop pretending you're fine. You're not fine, and that's okay. You don't have to be fine. You just have to start building something different today. Now, stop bleeding quietly. Start building loudly, through action, through structure, through showing up even when every part of you wants to hide. That's how you heal, not by feeling better first, by moving forward anyway. The bleeding stops when you decide to address the wound, not before. So decide right now. Are you going to keep pretending, or are you going to start building? Your life is waiting for your answer.